If you go back and you look in a decade, those teams that win 54% of the time always wind up in the postseason, and they more often than not wind up in World Series. So there's your bigger picture process. Nobody wants to hear the goal this year is we're going to win 54% of the time, because sometimes 54% is some. One year you're going to win 60%, another year you're going to win 50%. It's whatever it is, but over time, that type of mindset gets you there. If what you're doing is focusing year to year on what do we have to do to win the World Series this year, you might be one of the teams that's laying in the mud and can't get up for another decade. So we're actually doing the fan base a favor and asking for their patience to win the World Series while we continue to build a sustainably good roster.
So those were a couple of the main lines that the media has pointed out from the Mariners' end of season press conference on Tuesday. By the way, their press conference was during the middle of the day, during a day where there was like 4 playoff games. There was no live stream of the video. There's no video or audio available anywhere online that you can go and watch the entire thing, seeing what Hollander, Dipoto, and Service all had to say. And all that we got from the press conference are various articles from reporters, as well as the clips that reporters had taken while they were there. That one that I just showed you was from a TV station that got a clip. For me, it's very frustrating as a fan, as I'm sure it is for you. We all have full-time jobs. We have a life. Baseball is our, side hobby or passion, and we want to follow up on our team, but they have no content available online showing what was actually said. So now we're basically forced to scroll Twitter and try to find a thread of someone that summarizes it well with what was actually said. And then you see these types of clips, and it definitely does not help.
Those teams that win 54% of the time always wind up in the postseason, and they more often than not wind up in World Series.
The Mariners won 88 games this year, making their winning percentage 54.3%, technically beating that 54% number. Now, what he means by it is that sometimes you'll win 60% of the games, sometimes you'll win 50% of the games, but a majority of the time, if you're winning 54% of the games over a 10-year span, then you're going to be in the World Series at some point. However, when was the last time that the Mariners won 60% or more of their games? It was back in 2001. And you'll notice that in the background here, these are the teams in the divisional series. The Mariners are not there. He then goes on to say that if your team is focusing on trying to win the World Series that year, that you might be one of the teams stuck in the mud for the next decade. I can understand what he's saying, because you don't want to give up your entire farm system in order to go get certain superstar guys in order to win just in one year. However, the Mariners are the only team that have not made the World Series in their franchise history. He then goes on to make a joke that clearly didn't land, in which he states that he's actually doing the Mariners fan base a favor and asking for their patience to win a World Series while also building a sustainably good and winning roster.
So we're actually doing the fan base a favor and asking for their patience to win the World Series while we continue to build a sustainably good roster.
Well, as I mentioned, Mariners have never made it to the World Series. They broke their 20-year playoff drought last year. There's no need for patience. Patience should be out of the dictionary completely. Their window started last year for sure. This year was definitely a window in which you expect to go out, make the playoffs, go for the World Series. This next 5-year period, every year you should be fighting to be in the World Series and win that. That should be your one goal for these next 5 years, this window that we have. And you can't be having patience when there's teams like the Rangers that are going out and getting guys like Marcus Semien, Corey Seager. Their entire pitching rotation, they essentially got these last 2 off seasons. And here's a clip from Corey Seager after they clinched their spot in the playoffs.
Yeah, it just speaks to the resilience of this whole team, organization, front office, owners. It's been a long way. CY's done a hell of a job of going out and getting guys that we need, and this clubhouse has done a hell of a job of competing all year. And same thing with Ray, to be able to go out and spend some money and get the guys that we needed in here, and this is what the reward is.
Now, you could absolutely use the front office and the ownership as a scapegoat, as they didn't spend as much money as people were hoping. However, you look at 5 of the teams that are in the playoffs right now, and they have payroll that's less than the Mariners. You've got the Tampa Bay Rays and the Baltimore Orioles at 27 and 28 overall in payroll. But when you're spending money in the offseason on guys like Tommy La Stella and AJ Pollock instead of maybe going out and getting Bellinger or other guys that you could have taken a risk on. The fact of the matter is that it's just as much on the players this year as it was on the front office, as in those final 15 days of the season, when the final weekend of the year, they had the chance to either win the division or make a wild card spot or miss completely out of the playoffs. The Mariners, the final 15 days of the season, had a 654 OPS, which was 25th in all of baseball. Their pitching also struggled at times in that final week, and it was absolutely right in their hands. They had total control of their destiny, and they just missed the playoffs. And Julio went 1 for 24 with 10 strikeouts in those final 7 games of the season, all home games. If he bats 300 those last 7 games, they're 100% in the playoffs. You can't be having your superstar with the bases loaded, popping out, striking out, grounding into double plays. But at the same time, the roster definitely could have been deeper with 1 or 2 more bats to fill it out. You have to also keep in mind that the Mariners were only in a position to make the playoffs the final week because they went on a truly historic run from July to August. They increased their playoff odds from 13% in mid-July to 84% at the end of August. Now, part of this was Julio was one of the hottest hitters in baseball, only behind Mookie Betts. He set an MLB record with 17 hits over a 4-game span. And without the hot stretch that the Mariners went through from July to August, the Mariners would just be a 500 ball club. However, during his opening statement on Tuesday, he said that even though the Mariners missed the playoffs this year, this was a step forward organizationally.
Here we are, an 88-win season. I will first start by saying I think in many ways this season, as much as it was disappointing in the end, was a step forward for us organizationally.
Jerry Dipoto was on Seattle Sports 710 this week to try to backtrack some of his comments ever so slightly. More so, he said that he's generally embarrassed for those 2 comments in specific, or more so that the fans misinterpreted what he was trying to say. I feel like we understand what he's trying to say. It's just not what you want to hear, and it's pretty tone deaf when you're coming off of an extremely frustrating season. As a whole, it's been a frustrating season, let alone the last few weeks of the season to miss the playoffs essentially by 1 game out of the wild card spot.
Yeah, first I'd like to say I'm generally embarrassed by the way, at least, that comment and especially one other was received. And I've been doing this job or roles like this for a long time now, and I've made mistakes. I've made my fair share, like most do, and this is kind of one of those times. And I just did a poor job of illustrating the points that I was trying to make. And in one case, I chose to try humor to lighten a grave question, and obviously that wasn't what the moment called for. And with this one, the 54%, I just completely whiffed in my attempt to paint a big picture baseline of what, obviously makes more sense to me than our fans and media. Our goal isn't to be mediocre. Our goal is to win championships and then to play at a high level for a long time. And that's what I was trying to convey. It just, obviously it didn't help. And that's, I wish I could hit reset and try it again, but that moment's gone. And the best I can do is continue to try to be candid and accessible. And I feel like over my time here, we've done that. Players, staff, all of our personnel. We want our fans to feel like they're part of the team and at minimum have a front row seat to what's happening. We tell them what we're doing, and then we do that thing. They may not always agree with it or like it, but we're very candid in that way. And I can assure everyone that we want to win.
To summarize my overall thoughts on the season, the end of season press conference on Tuesday, as well as Jerry on Seattle Sports 710, it's frustrating that he didn't just come out and call the season what it was, a failure. We didn't make the playoffs. That's a failure. At the same time, I acknowledge that the Mariners are in a great spot organizationally moving forward. They have one of the best rotations in all of baseball, extremely young, extremely talented. They have one of the best young superstars in Julio Rodriguez for the next decade. JP Crawford is coming off of his best year offensively of his career. Cal Raleigh is an absolute stud, a switch-hitting catcher that wants to be in the lineup every day no matter how banged up he is throughout the season, leading all of Major League Baseball catchers in home runs. Outside of that, there's a lot up in the air. You have Eugenio Suarez likely for 1 more year. Ty France is coming off of a down year, although it sounds like he's going to be headed to Driveline Baseball this offseason with JP Crawford. And it sounds like there might be some other guys joining them at Driveline. I'm not sure who else. You have to fill the void of Teoscar Hernandez, who's now leaving. You've got the young promising outfielders with Jared Kelnick and Dominic Canzone. You've got Josh Rojas at second base. But you're going to have to find guys this offseason that can put the bat to the ball. The Mariners had 3 of the top 8 players in all of baseball as far as total strikeouts You had Eugenio Suarez, Teoscar Hernandez, and then Julio Rodriguez was 8th in MLB. You're going to have to find some guys this offseason that can put the bat to the ball and have a high batting average. The roster up to this point has been built around walks, strikeouts, and home runs, which works for the most part until you get to the late innings. And even guys that have a good walk percentage, you can't rely on drawing a walk. You have to be able to get a base hit in certain clutch situations. If a pitcher is going to be throwing you strikes, you got to be able to hit them. You can't draw a walk if a guy is pounding the zone. The organization will likely have to trade from their depth in their starting pitching or from somewhere else in their organization to go get the bats that they need. The free agent class this winter is not as deep as it was last year. Some of the big name bats that they might try to go after, of course, Shohei Ohtani, we'll see what happens with that. There's Cody Bellinger, Rhys Hoskins, Matt Chapman. Outside of that, there's not too many guys that would make all that much sense for the Mariners. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below on what Jerry had to say either on Tuesday or on Seattle Sports 710. What do you think the Mariners should do this offseason? Which free agents should they sign? What types of trades should they make? And I truly appreciate the support you all have shown throughout the baseball season. It's been a lot of fun to create content talking about the Mariners and about baseball. Now it's time to make some content talking about football. And of course, I'll keep you posted on any moves that the Mariners make this coming offseason. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.